Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final unit of our class, Unit 15. We made it. Take a deep breath, breathe in. You did it. Proud of you, and glad to be on this journey with you. Pat yourself on the back, give yourself a round of applause, whatever it takes. We made it, and there's been a lot of good work that's happened in this class. Proud of each of you for engaging with the text and for doing the work. And I hope that this is something that can serve you well in the future as you continue to work with nonprofits and continue to do the work of communication and exploring all the ways that that can happen within the context of the field of nonprofit development and philanthropy. So, with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into the last bit of time that we have here together. I'm going to talk briefly about where things go from here according to our syllabus, and then we'll go into a little bit of a conversation about some of the readings from this week. So, when we look at Unit 15, the readings for this week were the TBA, right? And you'll see on the Canvas site that your reading is similar to what it was last week. Once again, you're going to choose another article from the Trotman Report back catalog, and you'll read on that and get to do your discussion board post on that reading. So, hope you find something interesting to read and talk about. And also the lecture today is going to be on a reading that I selected from the Trotman Report. The really big thing to be aware of is that your final group assignments for the drafts of the grant writing assignment and the strategic planning assignment, they are all due by 11:59 p.m. here on the 4th of May. Please keep reaching out to me if you have questions. This is an important one, a big part of your grade. And the good news, though, is that you have been turning in drafts of this assignment before now. So you should have a pretty clear idea of what's being looked for and what you can do to improve upon the drafts that you've turned in. And hopefully, in that way, it'll help you finish strong on both of those projects. You also have the instructor lecture here and then discussion board posts as well for Unit 15 and the reading quiz also. If you have any questions, again, reach out to me, but I think we're in pretty good shape. And once again, congratulations here on making it to the end. And let's go into a little bit of a conversation. I'm going to share my screen with you because I think that can be helpful here in just a moment. Let's see here. Okay, there it is. I'm going to share this, make it full size and present. Here we go. So the article that I was reading for our time together today was from the Trotman Report, and it's by Sandra R. Williamson Ash from Norfolk University, I believe. And this article is called "Thinking Through Leadership for Nonprofits." It was interesting. I think there were some cool coordinates that were pointed to in the article. A little different than some of the material we've been reading, maybe geared a little bit towards more of an entry kind of conversation. But I think some of the helpful things were that it pointed towards two specific theories of nonprofit action and leadership that I think can help us spark a discussion here. Some of the highlights from the article, the fact that leadership can help nonprofits navigate challenges, right? And these are things that we've talked about throughout this class, that nonprofits face systemic, personnel related, process oriented challenges. The laundry list is long for the many things that a nonprofit has to navigate and overcome. And oftentimes, what can be really hard for a nonprofit, according to the article, is driving change, mission alignment, culture creation, understanding the impact of an organization's choices on people. These are kind of more abstracted problems. They're less about balancing the budget or fixing a leaking roof and more about communication related problems. They're problems that have to do with care for an organization and leadership, right? And I think those are things that sometimes we can feel less equipped to handle rather than a particular subject matter expertise or skill that we have. But communication competence and leading from a place of caring for the communicative environment of an organization, that's a skill too. And it's one that if you're part of the Department of Communication and Rhetorical Studies at Duquesne, it's a skill that you've been building through your classes. And we've talked a little bit about it here in class as well, too, on what can be done to nourish the communicative environment of an organization, right? And effective leadership and leader preparation are crucial for responding to these kinds of challenges, right? And the big kind of takeaway from the article is that nonprofit organizations should prioritize service and transformation, so service related to their goal, but also transforming communities, giving people the resources to transform their communities and their worlds, right? Servant leadership was one of these big kind of topics that was brought up by the article. And there are a lot of different kind of places you can find research on servant leadership. One of the big hubs for this is the School of Leadership out of Gonzaga University over in Spokane, Washington. They do a lot of work on servant leadership, and you can find more there. I think they even have a podcast. But servant leadership prioritizes serving the needs of others, right? It's other focused rather than just person centered, like self focused, right? This aligns well with purpose driven nature of nonprofits focused on serving people, right? Servant leadership really fits well with nonprofit leadership. And servant leaders foster ownership of a mission and they support a person's potential, right? There's this belief that we all have ownership of where an organization is going. One of the key benefits of servant leadership is that it can lead to reduced turnover and increased employee self-confidence, right? I think servant leadership also really takes into account this idea that a leader should lead by example. They should be the kind of person who models um, the organization's ethos and um, the whole purpose, right? It's something they should embody, and that their character is really important in the service of the mission of the organization, right? A servant leader doesn't expect to be served all the time. They expect to kind of get their hands dirty and be involved in the mission. I have a leader who is my boss at one point for a nonprofit I was working in, and he had just come into his position, and he was a pretty big deal, not just in our organization, but also internationally, having a really big reputation. We were incredibly lucky to get him as a leader of our organization, and he kind of bolstered the whole organization, just one of those rock star superhero sort of leaders for a nonprofit. And he didn't act like a big deal. Like he was really approachable, really kind, um, took the trouble and the effort to learn people's birthdays and to have a personal relationship with people. And consistently, over and over again, one of the things that really stood out to me was that whenever we'd have an event or something that he was a part of, like a group meeting or in the staff Christmas party, he'd be the person who would stay around at the end, helping to clear the tables and clean the tablecloths. And he did not have to do that. He had people for that. And he was demonstrating what kind of values were important to him and to our organization. And that doesn't mean that he was always doing the groundwork. He had other things that he had to do that were his responsibility that nobody else could do, and those would carry him off to do other things at times. But he was willing to model and embody the values that we had as an organization, and that really speaks volumes, right? When you look at servant leadership, transformational leadership was another topic that came up. So, transformational leadership focuses on creating shared visions and communicating ideas and improving engagement. It emphasizes empathy, right? And this understanding that when we can empathize with each other and with the kinds of communities we're serving, it can create a synergy and it can help us as we rebuild systems and maximize individual talents towards a collective goal or team effort, right? It's crucial for driving change and adapting to evolving needs, and it fosters a culture committed to effectiveness and efficiency. This idea of, hey, maybe we're not who we need to be as an organization yet, but we're going to get there. We're going to do the hard work that it takes to become the kind of organization that can serve our stakeholders well. And I think a big important part of that is curiosity and a commitment to learning, to continuing to learn, even when it's tough and even when it requires extra kind of oomph from us, right? Extra effort and work. Um, this is something that I'm always inspired by my spouse. She is one of the hardest workers that I know, and as a person, she is endlessly curious, and she's always challenging herself to grow. Whereas I'd like to kind of just rest on my laurels and kind of be like, we're here, I'm good. Like when we go hiking, when we get to the top of a peak or something, my first tendency is like, I'm just gonna rest, and we did it. Whew, why don't we lay here and take a nap? Right? And my wife's response is very different. She's like, okay, we conquered this peak. Let's go to the next one, right? It's this transformational kind of view that is driven by a genuine curiosity and determination to be better and to keep becoming better. And that's part of what drives transformational leadership. Change management and leadership alignment. So, um, nonprofits, as we've been talking throughout this book, we need to continue to become skilled at managing change because change is all around us and it's increasingly becoming a part of the nonprofit landscape. Things are less stable now than maybe they've ever been, with funding priorities changing, new kinds of funders coming in on the scenes. Um, Especially some of these entrepreneurial funders who are coming from a tech background, all kinds of different expectations, the disappearance or kind of shifting of government grants. This is a huge deal in nonprofits that may be funded by like the National Endowment for the Humanities or health kind of endowments or even the arts. All of these areas are shifting and changing priorities pretty drastically over the last year and a half. And that's only going to continue into the future. Uh, in addition, communities are having new kinds of needs. I think food banks and others that are doing kind of basic service needs are on the front lines of this as they face emerging needs from populations that maybe didn't have those kinds of needs in the past. I know one of the nonprofits I worked at, a community engaged sort of nonprofit that had their hands in a whole bunch of different things. They had started a like once a month food bank over the last couple years, and they would collect groceries and things from local stores, and they were kind of part of a bigger network. But it was this location that people could come to in a small rural community, and it started out being pretty small, right? You'd have 20 people that would come in and grab some food and a couple things, and they were people at very much the lower end of the income scale. But over the last 5 6 years, that's shifted drastically where um, they still have this segment of people who have a need, who had a need previously, but I think they now have like 80 plus people. So it's grown by 4 or 5 times. And not just because of word of mouth, but because need has increased. And the profile and demographics of people who are coming are different too. There's more people who maybe come from a traditional lower or middle or even upper middle class background in that community who have less access to food as food prices have risen and inflation has kind of gone crazy. Um, there's new kinds of vulnerabilities in communities, and nonprofits, especially those that are serving those kinds of needs, are at the front lines of that. And so there's this need to be able to handle adaptation and transformation. The five-step change management process, talk about that a little bit. Both servant and transformational leadership styles support different stages of change. While transformational leadership aids in preparing the organization and developing a vision, servant leadership prioritizes people as preparation happens and implementation takes place, right? And we can see that those kinds of frameworks being helpful maybe for an organization. Um, Overall, flexibility is kind of the key word of the moment that we're in right now. Flexible, flexible, flexible. Um, we don't know what's going to be coming down, uh, and there's a need to be able to continue to interact with care and to listen to the needs of the stakeholders we're serving and to plan ahead to be able to shift priorities and resources to be able to meet those. And in the long term, this is part of what's so important with keeping uh, a system or an apparatus for analyzing and implementing improvements and change, right? Investing in learning and developing the talent of our team members, right? And this balance between servant leadership and its focus on individuals and serving individuals, and then the focus of transformational leadership on vision and where we're going. It's kind of like walking a tightrope where you have to have an awareness of where you're putting the next foot, but you also need to be aware of where you're headed at the same time. Um, yeah, I do think courage is a really important part of being able to be in the nonprofit world in this moment. Courage because we don't know exactly what's happening or what we're going to be facing in the nonprofit landscape over the next 5, 10 years, even next year or next few months, right? And I think that there is room still for a lot of creativity and for those who are willing to help people and roll up their sleeves and do the hard work of creating something that can serve people well and of stewarding that organization. So I applaud you for being a part of this conversation and for beginning to think through some of the ways that nonprofit development and philanthropy can be incorporated into maybe the work you're doing already or work you would like to do in the future. As always, please reach out to me even after this class ends. If you have questions about the nonprofit and philanthropy sector, I'd love to talk them through with you and to be able to be a support in whatever way I can. So take care. And again, thank you for your time in this class.